hosting our ICT week in the beautiful nation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Let me just share a few slides with you. Okay, so here we are. I'll just do a few slides and then I'll hand over to Camille from St. Kitts and Nevis, joining us from St. Kitts and Nevis to tell us more about what's going on locally and how they're preparing to host us in beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis. I hope you can see the slide. Let me just put it in. Okay, so ICT Week, CTU ICT Week 2024 takes place in St. Kitts and Nevis, September 30th to October 4th. You can scan that QR code, get more information, register. Most of the sessions are open. We do have a few closed sessions where we'll be meeting with our ministers, talking about the business of the CTU, presenting our strategic plan, what we're doing over the next 4 years, over the next calendar year as well. And the theme is bridging technologies for a sustainable and inclusive future. And why should you attend? We're talking about emerging technology trends. And of course, we couldn't do that without talking about artificial intelligence, about new satellite technologies that are providing additional connectivity for us. We have a number of regional and international ICT industry experts who will be making contributions that will help us in terms of shaping the regional policy agenda. We'll expect 200 plus attendees, 16 different events. I'll show you what they are in the next slide. 70 plus speakers and 60 plus global organizations. So this is the week at a glance. We start off with a youth network forum, and that will run in parallel with the 51st, will run in parallel with the strategic ministerial seminar. And we'll have an opening ceremony and reception. Of course, that's by invitation. I'm pleased to be joined by the Secretary General of the ITU and other dignitaries that I'll tell you about as well. We have our 51st Executive Council meeting, and if you are familiar with the structure of the CTU, the Executive Council is the body that we report to from the Secretary, and then they in turn report to the General Conference of Ministers. There'll be some other exciting things happening. Our Regulators Forum, where we will be advancing the whole notion of a harmonized regulatory framework within the Caribbean. CARIGNOG will be meeting, and we also have a cybersecurity awareness forum taking place. We'll be hosting some events as well in Nevis. Again, for more details, you can go to our website, ctu.int. We'll be very pleased to be joined by the very esteemed guests you see on the screen here, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, the Prime Minister of Grenada, and lead in the Caribbean on the Science and Technology in the Caribbean Quasi-Cabinet. Our President, of course, Senator the Honorable Hassel Bacchus, President and also the Minister of Digital Transformation in Trinidad and Tobago. Our guest host, Honorable Conrad Maynard, Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy and Utilities, Domestic Transport, Information, Communications and Technology, and Post, quite a large portfolio. Secretary General of the ITU, Doreen Bogdan Martin, first female Secretary General of the ITU, her first official visit to the Caribbean. And we're so pleased to be able to welcome her and for her to make special presentations in the Youth Forum and also in the Ministerial Seminar and at our opening ceremony. Of course, the region is forging very strong ties with Africa, and we welcome also the Secretary General, Mr. John Omo of the Africa Telecoms Union, who will be joining us virtually. Ms. Bernadette Lewis, first female Secretary General of the CTO and former Secretary General of the CTU, will be joining us in person in St. Kitts and Nevis. These are all of our esteemed, or some of our esteemed speakers. The Caribbean private sector organization, companies like Viasat, providing satellite connectivity, Meta, who we all know, Blue Nap Americas, Paradise Mobile, a new mobile company, doing some very interesting things in the region, the Eastern Caribbean Telecoms Commission, and a youth representative, Danilo Oladapo, of the ITU, Cloud Carib, and many, many more. These are some of our sponsors so far, the cable and wireless, Huawei, Starlink, company, again, offering LEO satellite services, etc. So, in the interest of time, I'll stop here and hand over to my counterpart in St. Kitts and Nevis. But you can register at ctu.int, scan the QR code, and we hope to see you there in person, preferably. But if not, join us for some of the exciting topics in the ICT Ministerial Seminar. Camille, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon again. I think Mr. Taylor did such an awesome job that he hardly left anything for me to say. But we would like to speak to you a bit about some of the national initiatives that we're going to be putting on as well. So we have a Tech Fest that we're going to be having on the Friday, which is the 4th. And we're going to invite all of you to come out to see what it is that we have in St. Kitts in terms of technology. We're hoping to have a lot of booths demonstrating what they are doing in their companies technology-wise. We also have workshops for persons with disabilities that is going to be hosted here at the National ICT Center. We also have a Cyber Awareness Forum where we have an opening address by Mr. Bevel Wooding. Some of the topics that we're going to be discussing is establishing a cyber resilient organization is imperative, and artificial intelligence and machine learning in cyber defense, the implications for the Caribbean. Apart from the lot of knowledge that you will gain and the networking that you can expect to achieve while you come here, we also want you to come to experience the nation itself, the friendly people, the many historical sites such as Bloody Point, the Black Rocks, Brimstone Hill, which is a historical beauty to behold. So we want you to come on out because we have a lot of exciting speakers. A lot of information will be shared, and then you can also enjoy the beauty of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I'm turning it back over to you, Mr. Taylor.
All right. Thank you so much for that additional information. I look forward to being there and joining you, as well as all of the other participants, our sponsors, speakers, and so on. So thank you for that update. Again, register at ctu.int in person if you can, but if not, join us virtually for many of the exciting topics. So we'll move on now to our LACNIC, our next speaker, LACNIC 42, which is being hosted in Paraguay. And to tell us about that is Mr. Miguel Ignacio Estrada. We call him Nacho for short. He's the Chief Strategic Relations Officer for LACNIC. And I'm going to hand over to you right now, Nacho. Is Nacho on? If not, we'll circle back. Okay. Okay, so we can circle back to Nacho, and we'll move then to the upcoming ITU meetings. We have a number of speakers, but I'm going to hand over to Nigel Casimir, my deputy, to tell us about the upcoming World Telecoms Standardization Assembly. And then I believe we have some other ITU colleagues on the line to tell us about the Accessible Americas ITU's Global Youth Summit as well.
Yes, thank you, Kashchi, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm standing in for the ITU today to talk about the WTSA. That is one of the ITU's global conferences. If you're familiar with the ITU, on their regular schedule, they would have one global conference every year. And this year, it's the turn of their standardization sector to host its global conference. And these global conferences for any of the individual sectors is held once every 4 years, approximately. And that 4-year period is taken as a study period, essentially, where they establish the priorities and working groups and so on that will function over that 4-year period. So here we are with the WTSA in 2024. And it really would be looking at the priorities of that sector for the IT. It's going to be held next month, October 15th to the 24th, 8 working days as they've advertised it, in New Delhi, India. The 15th of October is actually a Tuesday, and on the Monday prior, the 14th of October, the WTSA will be preceded by the Global Standards Symposium, GSS 24 on October 14th. That October 14th, that also happens to be World Standards Day. And this, of course, is the ITU standardization sector. So it's all good and all well coordinated. Just to talk a bit about that Global Standards Symposium that will precede the WTSA. The theme of it is charting the next digital wave, emerging technologies, innovation, and international standards. The technical standards, of course, would underpin all the innovations and developments and proliferation of the equipment and services that we would need for keeping the digital economy going and growing. This GSS will in fact be exploring issues, as I said, standards for artificial intelligence, open source, smart cities, and so on. And the reason, what it does is that it provides a platform for dialogue and exchanges between high-level policymakers, and there are lots of ambassadors and ministers and so on expected to speak on the program. So exchange between them and the industry leaders, the persons who are developing technologies and services that need the input from the ITU and say from the member states, in fact, to adopt these various standards that would drive technology. So the work of this one-day symposium and the discussions coming from that would help to inform the work of the WTSA that immediately follows it over the next 2 weeks or eight working days. So the WTSA, as I've already said, defines the next period of study for the ITU team. And we're looking at that period up to 2028. And in order to get its work done, what it does is that it establishes what they call study questions and study groups. And the study groups would examine in groups of collective experts from around the world. What are the appropriate responses to the question? What are the appropriate standards that need to be developed and so on? Those priorities would be discussed and established over the course of the WTSA. Part of what comes out of it is, in fact, as well, a series of resolutions, which also help to codify and guide the work of the standardization sector over the next 4 years. So they'll be electing chairs and vice chairs of the various ITU study groups. They'll be finalizing the various study questions and resolutions. And there are also multiple associated events and activities that will be taking place during the WTSA as well. So how can you take part and register and so on? The ITU is very good at making all its information available via its website. So you go to the ITU website. There will be the tab for WTSA, and this is the WTSA landing page. This is what it looks like. You can see right away what the venue would be in New Delhi. You can see we are 32 days to the event, and all the information related to participating in the WTSA is on this page. So you can see copies of the invitation letters, and the invitation letters have gone out to all the member states, sector members, ITU academia, and so on. There's information here on the candidates that have been put forward so far as chairs and vice chairs of the various groups. Practical information related to travel to New Delhi. And I did mention that there would be multiple activities and events associated with this whole WTSA meeting period. Regional preparatory meetings are taking place in various parts of the world. We haven't had a Caribbean preparatory meeting, especially for this, but that's a kind of historical reason that we'll be overcoming in the near future. But there have also been interregional meetings in preparation. There is information, more detailed information related to the agenda and specifics of the GSS, the Global Standards Symposium on the 14th of October. Expositions associated with WTSA. I'm not sure I mentioned that. Yes, I did. The World Standards Day is October the 14th as well, and there is information related to that. In the last few years, the ITU has made a special effort to mainstream gender inclusivity and youth inclusivity in its works. So each of these sectors of the ITU now has activities related to a network of women to increase the involvement of women towards parity in the work of the ITU. So the network of women for WTSA is part of what would also take place during that 2-week work period. Other workshops related to disaster risk reduction, robotics, AI for good, and so on. And interestingly, at the end of WTSA 24th of October, that date is also the date of, is also UN Day. And I see a note from one of the audience members, Dr. Tim Mallory, particularly pointing out October the 17th, WTSA Network of Women's Day on during the course of WTSA. So, as I said, this is one of the ITU's big global conferences. And for all of those involved in the standardization sector, it's a must for academia, for technology developers, and so on. So we are all encouraging you to attend. All the information is there on the ITU webpage for you to attend. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Nigel, for that. And I just want to remind our participants that there's a Q&A pod in the Zoom. Please feel free to drop your questions there and we respond at any time. We also have Ana Venerosa, Program Coordinator for the ITU, to tell us all about ITU Accessible Americas taking place in Mexico. Ana, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Casimir, all the participants that join us this important meeting. And thank you, Mr. Casimir, for providing all those details within our ITU agenda. Thank you very much for that. And it's a great pleasure to be here and share with you some important elements on the upcoming Accessible Americas. I do have a presentation. If you want, I can share it or just can speak. It's up to you.
Yeah, go right ahead. Let us know if you can share it.
Okay. Okay, so you'd like me to share or not?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me try to share. Okay.
Yeah, right. That's what great.
Just
Yeah.
let me know if you can see my screen.
It's coming up. Yeah, if you can just presentation mode.
You can see it already?
Yeah, but we're saying the presentation mode, the speakers mode, as it were.
We are seeing the presenters view.
Yeah,
as opposed to the full.
And not the full screen.
Yeah, so choose from there. Just click on that. Display settings. And switch.
sorry, I did something wrong here. So you can see it right now?
Yeah, we can see it, so that's fine. We can
Yeah,
proceed.
Okay, thank you. I have tried to adjust, but I couldn't.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you can see.
Okay, so thank you once again for this moment to share a little bit about what is planned in terms of Accessible Americas. So this digital inclusion event is going to be carried out in Mexico City the second week of November, from the 12th to the 14th of November in Mexico City. Just a quickly highlight on what, for those that are not used to Accessible Americas, on what it means and how important it is for our region. This is, although this is an event, we can consider that Accessible Americas is our regional platform dedicated to the promotion, discussions, and interactions about ICT accessibility, with the main objective to enhance stakeholders' knowledge on digital inclusion, policies, and strategies, to promote the interchange of good practices in the field of digital inclusion, as well as interactive discussions. For this year, we are make some kind of strengthening discussions in the field on how emerging technologies can and their potential can benefit persons with disabilities, women, girls, people live in remote areas, and the elderly, for example. And this year, special attention will be given to the needs of indigenous and rural communities. In addition to this, we are planning to set up an ITU executive training, which name is ICT Accessibility, Paving the Way to a Digitally Inclusive World. Having said that, I could say that the main topics that we are tailoring within this Accessible America agenda are mainly focused in the discussions and interactions on policy and strategies in digital inclusion, for which we are inviting government representatives in order to share their projects and initiatives. As I have said, emerging technology and how it can contribute to the digital inclusion process, focus on indigenous people in remote communities and which are the kind of challenge of those people living in remote areas and how we can overcome them. Not less important is also to discuss the internet usage gap in the Americas region. Data, challenge, and opportunities are going to be presented, and also discuss the future of ICT accessibility, also based on the trends on emerging technologies such as IoT, AI, and AR, VR, for example. In addition to this, I just would like to highlight that, of course, also encourage all of you to attend Accessible Americas in the nice city of Mexico City. The event is being hosted by ITU in collaboration with IFT, and we are expecting a number of distinguished panelists, international and national ones, and hope also to count on the presence of the invitees of this meeting, and also from CTU that has always given us the privilege and be honored to have you on board in every year in Accessible Americas. Before closing the presentation about this event, I would just like to mention that about the Global Youth Summit, we are willing to provide more information in another meeting or another session that you can invite us to share, because we are ultimating the details, and then we have preferred to provide more information in details about the Global Youth Summit in another opportunity. Thank you very much. This is my contact information on a screen, and I am all available for any other information or clarification that I can provide within Accessible Americas or any other ITU event in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well, Anna, for sharing with us. Happy to participate as well every year. It's very much in line with our initiatives for ICT for persons with disabilities, ICT for all. In fact, we do have a workshop coming up in our ICT week for persons with disabilities, and we look forward to, we're taking some facilitators there to take kits with us to help us conduct those workshops. So thanks very much for your partnership. There are a couple other ITU meetings coming up, but we don't have presenters for those. We invite you to go to our website, ctu.int, click on events, click on non-CTU events, and you'll see the links to those upcoming meetings. And the agendas and so on. So thank you very much, ITU, for that segment. We're going to go back now to Nacho to tell us about LACNIC 42 taking place in Paraguay. Over to you, Nacho.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you, Rodney, Nigel, and all the team for the invitation. It is my pleasure to present again in this so important effort from the CTU to keep the Caribbean community informed about processes and activities around the world. I am now here to present about LACNIC 42 and LACNOG 2024. Both events will take place together in Asunción, Paraguay, from the 7th until the 11th of October at the CONMEBOL Convention Center. So those interested in football or soccer, this would be a good venue for you. As it is usual, we will have many tutorials during these events. For example, in secure routing, IPv6 and operators, DNS hackathons, network automation using Python, RIPE, Atlas monitoring. There are many different tutorials you'll have the chance to go through. Also, we will have our usual policy public forum where the regional community discusses changes, proposals to our policy manual. This public document determines how we must manage resources within our region. There will also be sessions and panels on satellite connectivity, connecting a Mediterranean country as is it in Paraguay, and a special one where we will speak about the transition of our leadership. As many of you already know, Oscar Robles, our CEO, will be stepping down by the end of October, and Ernesto Majó will be assuming as our new CEO. Regarding the LACNOG sessions for this year event, will be addressing IXPs, manners, RPKI, NICAS technology, community networks, IDN, this is internationalized domain names, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, DDoS attacks, and IoT security. There are very diverse sessions during this event, so I think it will be really interesting. And then we'll have a first technical colloquium symposia. Will also be happening there. This is a discussion forum for incident response and security teams to share information about vulnerabilities, incidents, and tools and all other issues that affect the operation of incident response and security teams. So we hope we have many of you as participants, either in person or remotely. For those who want to register, you can do so at lacnic.net. And again, thank you very much for this effort, and thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you as well, Nacho. I've been to LACNIC before, of course, and there are usually some capacity building sessions, some workshops. We'll be having those as well in any particular areas?
Yes, well, actually, this will be the first time we will be doing a workshop on internet governance, specifically in internet governance. And well, then we'll have many tutorials, as I was telling, on IPv6, RPKI, secure routing, and all this technical stuff, I would say. But I would say the most related to policy would be this workshop on internet governance, and I hope you can go there and enjoy. We will have, for those participating, well, in person or remotely, we will be having interpretation services, so more than invited.
All right, thank you. And lastly, I know the last one I attended, actually, the issue of fair share was a big topic. I know it's a concern for the technical community. Is that something that will be on the agenda this time around?
Not this time as a main topic, but for sure there will be many discussions in sessions like parallel. They will take the subject in parallel, I would say, go through that, but not we will not have a panel or anything around that.
Okay, got you. Thank you. So thank you very much, Nacho. Reminder that you can post your questions or comments in the chat in Zoom, and we'll endeavor to answer those as quickly as possible. I'll hand over to Nigel to tell us about our next speaker.
Thank you, Ashley. Just to say my experience with LACNIC as well, and they've always had a strong emphasis on the capacity building side. So it is quite useful from that point of view. Yeah. But also serving the Caribbean as far as internet numbering is concerned is the American Registry for Internet Numbers, or ARIN. And ARIN is also having a meeting next month. And I will invite Mr. Nate Davis, and he is a senior government affairs analyst at ARIN, to tell us about ARIN 54 taking place in Toronto. And he'll also mention as well a later event, the Connected Caribbean Summit. So Nate, over to you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, and to you as well, Deputy Secretary General. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's good to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Let me share, if I may, my presentation. And we'll go into... Give me one moment here.
There you go. That's it.
Yes. The Zoom banner is blocking some of my stuff here. So
We can see it.
all right, great. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to talk about two items as the Deputy Secretary General mentioned. I'm going to talk about ARIN 54 and the Connected Caribbean Summit. So ARIN 54, our public policy and members meeting, is going to occur the 24th and 25th of October. That'll take place in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's in person and virtual, so we encourage everybody to attend, whether it's in person or not. Participation is free, and that's regardless of whether you show up in person or virtual. The venue hotel for those that'll be there in person is the West End Harbor Castle, and there is the link that you will find for actual more details regarding meeting registration, the venue, list of attendees, and so forth. So why participate? So the fall meeting of the ARIN meeting, we have two meetings a year for those folks that aren't aware. We have a spring meeting and a fall meeting. The fall meeting is our members meeting as well. So we'll have reports from the ARIN Board of Trustees. The ARIN Board of Trustees will report on board activities, which the members will be interested in seeing, as well as financial reports. The board activities report will share some of the activities of the board, including providing strategic guidance to ARIN, the organization. And of course, the financial reports will give a summary of how the organization is doing financially. We'll also receive or provide updates from ARIN's operations, engineering, routing security, and an overall services report card. That services report card is actually the result of a survey where we go out to our members and ask them how we're doing in providing services to the community. So that report card will be provided at that meeting. Also coming up at that meeting is we have 12 policies. I call them numbering policies. They're internet numbering policies. It's how ARIN, as a regional internet registry, issues numbers, IPv4, IPv6, and autonomous system numbers to the community. And those numbering policies, we have 12 under consideration that are looking for community input. Another reason to participate either online or in person. And those help the advisory council, the Aaron Advisory Council, to collect that input and formulate the best possible policies that can work effectively for the community. Lastly, we will also have candidate speeches. We have open elections occurring at the closure of this Aaron 54 meeting, where we have open seats for the Aaron Board, the Aaron Advisory Council, and the Address Supporting Organization, which is part of the ICANN ecosystem. We have candidates for the Aaron Board and Aaron Advisory Council from what we call all three sectors within the Aaron region. So that would be the Caribbean, Canada, and the United States. So we'd really like to have, for all members, all general members that are eligible to vote, have them make sure they participate in that election. Continuing on, we will also have an update from the Number Resource Organization Executive Council. That is the executive council of all leaders of the 5 RIRs. And then we'll also have a report from the Address Supporting Organization, Address Council. And lastly, an update from the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, IANA, which issues the internet number resources to the RIRs. We'll have a report from them, and they're an important component of the ICANN organization. Lastly, there'll be a North American Network Operators Group update, otherwise known as NANOG. The NANOG meeting in Toronto actually immediately precedes the Aaron meeting. So if you are interested in participating at the Aaron meeting, you may want to further consider participating in the NANOG meeting as well. And so that is an overview of the Aaron 54 Public Policy and Members meeting. The next meeting I'll talk about is the Connected Caribbean Summit in 2024. That'll be, yes.
Yes, sorry, just before you go on, just if you go back to the election slide, just had a very quick question there for you.
Sure.
And just for clarification, if you are getting numbering resources from Aaron, you're eligible to vote.
So we have two classes of members. We have service members and we have general members. The service members have resources from Aaron, as well as those resources are held under a registration services agreement. General members are exactly the same as service members in that they have resources from Aaron. They have those resources under a resource services agreement, but they've also indicated an interest in voting in an Aaron election. So it's those general members that are eligible to vote. Service members cannot vote, but general members can. Now, service members can change to a general member, but they have to express their interest in participating in an Aaron election. That's an excellent question. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, and lastly, so those persons interested in serving on the board and the advisory council, they already would have expressed an interest?
Yes, that's correct. We just recently issued a slate of candidates. Some of you who are on Aaron's mailing list may have seen the slate of candidates for both the board AC and also the ASO AC. So that's been issued. These activities regarding candidacy, nominations, and so forth typically take place earlier in the year, and it's at this point the slate of candidates is actually announced.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you can proceed. I'll look for any other questions, but go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good questions. All right, the Connected Caribbean Summit will take place the 10th and 11th of December. That's going to be held at the Hilton Miami Airport Blue Lagoon. In Miami, it's very close to the airport. That is an in-person meeting. Registration is required, and I've provided a link there as far as further information on where you can find out more about the event. Now, that being said, why participate? So this is an annual gathering. This is the second annual event of this particular meeting. It's an annual gathering of government, business, justice, and other stakeholders. We bring them together and focus on collaborative problem solving to help accelerate Caribbean development, specifically making sure that we have an open, safe, and resilient global internet. So who are some of the, in addition to business and government and justice participants that attend? So we have our partner ICANN, Representative Albert Daniels participates, as well as CTU. We have Caribbean Chamber of Commerce participates. So it brings together all these important segments of business and government and industry together in a forum in which we can talk about the issues that are important to the Caribbean and hopefully come out with actions that help advance the development of the ICTs and the internet within the Caribbean. So day one typically looks like a plenary, and we also take time to talk about regional trends that are impacting advancing those efforts in the Caribbean. Day two, we have breakout sessions between business leaders, technology executives, and the third, the justice and legal officers, for them to sort of talk about issues specific to their own sectors. With that in mind, we eventually bring those three groups back together and conclude on the last day of a closing plenary, or the afternoon of day two. With that, I will pause for any questions.
There is a question in the chat with respect to whether there be remote participation, and if not, the sessions will be recorded for later viewing. That's from Tracy Hackshaw.
Yeah, Tracy, that's a great question. Tracy, I'm not aware of, in fact, I know there's not going to be remote participation. I'm not sure whether or not there's going to be an archive or capture of that, but since I have your email address, I'll be happy to follow up and get back to you on that particular matter.
All right, thank you very much for that question, Tracy. Fee for registration.
Okay.
Yeah, the registration fees, I think for the Connected Caribbean, I believe it's $600 for a participant. And that link that I provided earlier actually has that.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing, but I believe off the top of my head, it was $600 per participant.
Okay, great, thank you. And also from Francola John, are there any candidates, or how many candidates from the Caribbean and CTU member states running for the board?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have, it's interesting because we have three from the Caribbean, and then we have one or two more who have close ties to the Caribbean. And what I mean by that is they formerly lived in the Caribbean and are no longer living in the Caribbean. They're actually living in the States. So it's sometimes hard to define, are they Caribbean candidates or not? But I believe two or three presently reside in the Caribbean. And then we have two or three that I have strong ties to the Caribbean.
We will accept them as Caribbean always. So that's all right. Thank you for that presentation, Nate. Stick around just in case there are any other questions in the chat. And thanks again for your continued support.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're slightly ahead of time. We do have a recording from the International Institute of Communications, IIC. They're having an International Regulators Forum and the 55th Annual Conference taking place in Bangkok, Thailand. The Director General could not join us today, but she sent a recording to tell you all about it. Just last year, was it this year? Time flies very quickly. They launched a Caribbean chapter in Barbados.
I think it was this year.
This year.
Earlier this year.
Yeah, okay. So we'll go ahead and hear from Lynn via video recording now.
Remember to share sound.
Cool.
Good afternoon, afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Brooks. It's a pleasure to introduce myself from the International Institute of Communications. I'm delighted to speak to you today and present at the CTU's 4th International ICT Forecast and Industry Watch meeting. Thank you for having me. IIC Director General Lynn Robinson sends her apologies as she is currently travelling back from Botswana, where we have been this week for our Botswana Forum. Some of you may be familiar with who we are and the work that we undertake, but for those who are not so familiar, the IIC is the policy platform for the digital ecosystem. We are a proud global organisation with a unique positioning in that we are trusted, independent and neutral. As mentioned to us recently by a number of our members, it is very difficult to find organisations that are truly unbiased, and I'm delighted to say that we are that unbiased organisation. We are a trusted convener of national regulators, competition commissions and industry across the digital ecosystem. Our programme and membership offering enables the opportunity for knowledge sharing, best practice and learning. Our programme offers an international, regional and domestic programme of meetings throughout the year, and I'm here today to update you on the upcoming regional and international meetings planned for the 4th quarter of this year that are of importance to the region and Caribbean participants. For the remainder of this year, we have our main international meeting, which is the IIC Communications Policy and Regulation Week. We will be in Bangkok in Thailand from the 4th to the 7th of November. The first 2 days, the 4th and the 5th of November, is our International Regulators Forum, where we are delighted to be hosted by the National Broadcasting and Telecommunications Commission of Thailand. This forum is for regulators only. Discussion topics include artificial intelligence, mobile network evolution, regulating digital platforms, online safety, and much more. Then we have our IIC Small Nations Regulators Forum on the afternoon of the 5th of November. The IIC SNRF was born as a result of representatives from island nations agreeing that particular issues were not unique to islands and countries with small populations and/or economies. The final 2 days of the week, the 6th and the 7th of November, will be our annual conference. This is open to regulators and industry. Senior industry representatives will join regulators, academics and other stakeholders from the telecoms, media and technology stakeholder communities for 2 days of discussions on the big questions and issues facing the sector. Discussion topics include bridging persistent gaps in broadband investment, rollout and affordability, tackling the disinformation battle in a year of multiple elections, competition in digital markets, responsible AI, content regulation of gaming, and much more. All the agendas and speakers confirmed so far are live on the IIC website. We would be delighted to see you in Bangkok. As mentioned earlier, we hold domestic meetings throughout the year through IIC chapters. We have a Caribbean chapter. This chapter is chaired by Alison Laycock of the Barbados Broadcasting Authority, Cordell Green of the Broadcasting Commission Jamaica, and Jerry George of the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission St. Lucia. We aim to hold one in-person meeting each year and one online meeting each year. Earlier this year, we saw the launch of the Caribbean chapter in Barbados, and on the 26th of September, we will be holding an online roundtable where you would be most welcome to attend. The theme of the meeting is AI ethics and governance, cybersecurity and data protection, implications for the Caribbean. You can find further information about the discussion topics on the IIC website. The next Caribbean chapter meeting will be held in person in St. Lucia in March 2025. We have plenty more events and meetings around the world for the remainder of 2024. All upcoming IIC event and agendas and speakers can be found on the IIC website. My contact details are there, so please do not hesitate to get in touch and I'll be delighted to assist. Thank you for having me, and we hope to see you at an IIC meeting soon.
Let me express my appreciation to IIC for that video presentation. We know they were quite busy in Botswana this week and preparing for the upcoming meeting in Bangkok. But Jerry George, clearly a faithful ambassador here, is posting about the roundtable mentioned by Emily, provided the website in the chat as well. And of course, Jerry, being from St. Lucia, is promoting the event in St. Lucia. And I think in March 2025, I believe we have that in our calendar. And Nigeria participated before in the IIC, and in particular the Small Nations Forum, I believe. Yep.
Yes, it's one of the Asian regulators forum. Definitely, that was in Miami last year, I think it was. So quite an interesting event.
Okay. Yeah, and Jerry, we're going to extend for our first forecast meeting for 2025, give you an opportunity to tell us about that meeting in St. Lucia. So be prepared to do that. And thanks for sharing the links here with us. I'm going to hand over to Nigel Casimir, Deputy SG, to tell us about the next presentation.
Yes, so kind of back on the internet side of things. We will be hearing next from Mr. Albert Daniels, who is the Senior Manager for Stakeholder Engagement in the Caribbean. His responsibility is Senior Management for ICANN. His responsibility is the Caribbean area. And he'll be talking to us about ICANN's big annual general meeting, which is ICANN 81, taking place in Istanbul, Turkey, 9th to 14th of November. And I think he'll also be mentioning a particular webinar that they will have next week on the RDRS. So over to Mr. Albert Daniels. Albert,
Thank you very much, Nigel. Are you hearing me clearly, and can you see my slides properly?
We are seeing the presenter's view, so maybe you should try that swap displays thing. Very good.
Okay, so now you're seeing the proper one, yeah?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Secretary General Taylor and Deputy Secretary General Casimir, for the opportunity to speak about ICANN 81, which is taking place from the 9th to the 14th of November, 2024. From this slide, perhaps those who are interested may want to make a note of the email address, as I would be happy to provide you with any information on anything that I mentioned here. The slides will also be shared. So ICANN 81 is taking place in Istanbul, Turkey. And what we try to do with ICANN meetings is rotate them in the 5 geographic regions to bring them closer to every part of the globe. And we've divided the globe into 5 geographic areas. And ICANN essentially has 3 different types of meetings every year. And this slide shows that we've just come from Kigali in Africa. And we'll be moving with ICANN 81 to Istanbul, Turkey, which is in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, before every ICANN meeting, there's a very important prep week, which is meant to prepare participants, particularly those who may be new to what happens at an ICANN meeting, by giving them an idea of how the meeting operates, what topics are going to be discussed, and how to participate. And this takes place in October from the 28th and also going all the way down to the 31st of October. And this is completely virtual. So I encourage anyone who's interested in ICANN 81 to join the prep week sessions so that they can learn what ICANN is all about, what's going to be discussed at the annual general meeting, and how to participate. And this slide also shows the future meetings after ICANN 81. The next one taking place, ICANN 82 in Seattle, Washington, the Community Forum in 2025. And then also in June 2025, ICANN 83, the Policy Forum, which is taking place in Prague. ICANN really is the place where decisions are made with regard to global numbering policy, country code top-level domain name policy, and generic top-level domain name policy. And it's really the community that drives this policy development. So what we try to do at ICANN is lower the bar as far as possible to participation. And there's several programs which assist participation globally. Our flagship program is the fellowship program, where ICANN actually covers the cost of airfare and accommodation with a small stipend for an attendee who has been successfully chosen to attend the ICANN meeting wherever it is taking place. Now you will see that applications for the fellowship for ICANN 81 and ICANN 82 are actually already closed, but the application round for ICANN 83 opens on the 24th of October and 21st of October and closes on the 24th of November. So those are dates to actually make a note of. Very quickly, how is the ICANN ecosystem structured? Most important part is the community, the multi-stakeholder global community where you have representatives of business, government, end users, the technical community, and they are the key individuals who actually drive policy development. The policies that are drafted then go to the ICANN board, which is a subset of the community. And once final votes are taken on policy, the ICANN board instructs the ICANN organization to actually implement these policies. So there are three different groupings that develop policy. The address supporting organization develops a global numbering policy. The country code name supporting policy develops a country code top level domain name policy. Our country codes are .bb for Barbados, .tt for Trinidad, .lc for St. Lucia, and so on. And then you have your generic name supporting organization, the GNSO, which develops policy for .coms, .orgs, .edus, and all of the new generic top-level domain names, .education, .hotels, .cars, .nyc, and so on. So these are the three bodies that develop policy at an ICANN meeting. And while that policy is being developed, you have four bodies that give advice to the ICANN board on the impacts that these policies are going to be having, representing the views of different stakeholder groups. The at-large gives the views of the end users. The Governmental Advisory Committee, the GAC, gives the perspective of the governments. The Root Server System Advisory Committee gives a perspective, a technical perspective from the root server operators. And finally, the Security, Stability, and Advisory Committee gives advice to the board on how the security of the internet will be impacted by any new policies. So essentially what happens within the whole ICANN ecosystem is you have these three supporting organizations that I just mentioned, identifying policies, areas in which policies should be developed, drafting policies, sending it through their council, sending it all the way up with community commentary to the board, which also puts these policies out for public comment, and it takes advice from the supporting organizations representing the end users, the security and the root server operators, and the governments of the world. So this is what happens essentially at an ICANN meeting. What we do in Latin American and Caribbean engagement ICANN team is we have a webinar before every ICANN meeting, particularly for GAC members. And it's actually meant to give the new representatives of governments at ICANN an idea of what is going to be discussed and how the discussions are going to take place. And this is particularly useful for new GAC representatives. We know the governments of the Caribbean change every 5 years approximately. It explains how the GAC functions and also how the GAC gives advice to the ICANN board through something known as a GAC communique. And it's not only useful for new GAC members, but it's also important for experienced and returning GAC members, because the hot topics that are going to be discussed at an ICANN meeting are raised, and the interactions that the board is going to have with the GAC, and also the interactions that the GAC is going to have with the supporting organizations. As I already mentioned, Prep Week will take place from the 28th to the 31st of October. It's online, and it's useful, of course, for experienced and particularly new ICANN attendees. And a similar thing takes place. We look at the hot topics. We look at important policy to be discussed, and information on this will be published. So now quickly to just look at a few key areas that will be coming up at ICANN 81. The RDRS, the Registration Data Request Service. I will talk about that a bit more in a moment. The ICANN Grant Program, which I'll also mention in a moment, and the next round of generic top-level domain names, and the Applicant Support Program, along with universal acceptance and DNS abuse. Now, RDRS, it wouldn't be an ICANN meeting if we didn't have a nice new freshly baked acronym, RDRS, Registration Data Request Services. When law enforcement and intellectual property and legal persons are doing investigations into bad actors on the internet, typically they need to know who is using a domain name, who that domain name is registered to, and how you can find that person. But with GDPR, a lot of that information has been redacted and is no longer easily available. So the RDRS system is meant to facilitate access to this data by the persons who need it. And you see here, this can be government officials, intellectual property professionals, cybersecurity investigators, law enforcement, and consumer protection agencies. So we will be having a webinar on RDRS this coming Tuesday, the 17th at 12 noon. And we'll be talking about the benefits of the RDRS system and how to use it and why it's important for these different agencies that I mentioned to actually be familiar with the RDRs. And like I said, you just drop me a line and I can give you information on how to register, and the CTU also has some of that information. Another very important topic that will be discussed at ICANN 81 is the next round of new generic top-level domain names. So the generic top-level domain name are the characters after the last dot in a website name or in an email address. And you see some examples here, .paris, .hotels, and .dance, .org, .chase, .charity, and you even see some in some new foreign characters. So what the community has requested is that there be more competition and choice. But what we found in the last round, where we went from 22 to over 1,200 new top-level domain names, is that the Caribbean did not participate much. There were several territories that did not participate much. And as a result, what we are trying to do with the next round is have an applicant support program, which would actually be providing discounts on application fees and operating fees, technical support for those who may not have participated in the last round because these types of support services were not available. So we encourage you to let us know who you feel we should be reaching out to and how we can reach out to them, so we can try to get as many more as possible participants in this new next round of new generic top-level domain names. So hopefully we'll get a few from the Caribbean. Another important and hot topic coming up at ICANN 81 is the applicant grant program. In the last round, there was some contention for top-level domain names, and the mechanism of last resort for deciding who actually got the domain names were auctions. So there's approximately $200 million of auction proceeds which are available. So the community decided to come up with something referred to as the grant program, where particular projects which are found to be in keeping with ICANN's mandate, which are proposed by organizations across the globe, are proposed, and then a decision will be made on what funds they actually get out of these auction proceeds. So the application round has been completed for that, and we are currently at the phase where the various applications are being reviewed. As you can see from this slide, over 83 million in terms of funding has been requested, with the average amount of funding requested being just over $330,000. In the first tranche of grants, 10 million is going to be actually awarded. So it will be interesting to see, what sorts of grants have been submitted, grant applications, and who these funds actually go to. So I will stop there and again show this slide, which actually has my email address on it in case anyone is interested in getting further details, registering for that RDRS webinar on Monday, or getting more information on ICANN 81, which is taking place in Istanbul, Turkey from the 9th to the 14th of November, 2024. And I think I'm within time, but I'll pass it back to you, Nigel or Rodney.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. So with respect to the RDRS, it seems like that's something that are certainly a law enforcement. You mentioned legitimate organizations, and you have law enforcement authorities. Is there any special attempt being made to promote it to our law enforcement officials here, perhaps through a regional body like CARICOM Impacts, which has an overall regional mandate on security?
Actually, absolutely, Rodney. I have written to the CARICOM Secretariat very specifically inviting the Secretariat to communicate the details about this webinar to CARICOM Impacts and all of the persons in their network across the Caribbean. What I can do, because I know you have some contacts there as well, I can share that invitation that I sent to CARICOM Impacts to you as well. I've been working also, as you would be aware, with your engagement team at the CTU to get it to law enforcement that you have within your network in your member states. Because as you quite rightly mentioned, law enforcement is exactly the type of requester who should be familiar with the RDRS and the benefits of it and how to go about using it. So I can share that information with you afterwards, and whatever you can do to help get this message to the right people so that we get a good participation on Tuesday would be appreciated.
All right, thank you. Another question from me is two. One is in the chat, one is from me, which is, you didn't mention the SID space, but I know this is something that we've advocated for and working along with our other small island developing states that often have a challenge just managing all of the policy processes within ICANN. But there is going to be a SID space in Turkey for us. And I just want to confirm that, and also to ensure that we utilize the resources there on the ground to make that SID space meaningful. And I'll just throw the other question, or well, this is really a comment from Tracy Hatshaw, that the ICANN GSE advised that the GAC Capacity Development Planning Team advised the GAC Capacity Development Planning Team that ICANN 81 is being focused on the Middle East and Arab region. And I suspect that is because of, as a result of where it's being hosted this time around.
Yes, I'll take both questions, try to do it quickly. There's a lot that happens when you drill down into the ICANN ecosystem. So this multi-stakeholder community has representatives in many areas. And a very important area to ICANN is the small island developing states. And as you quite rightly mentioned, we are focusing now on that particular grouping, and this has not been done before, by having that space available at ICANN meetings so that the specific needs and the interests of SIDS can be addressed within an ICANN meeting. It would take a long time for me to go into each sub-area that is discussed at an ICANN meeting, but in answer to your question, yes, there would be a SID space at ICANN 81. Now, remember I mentioned at the opening that we have these ICANN meetings rotated around the globe because we appreciate that, you know, the different parts of the globe have different needs. And as you quite rightly said, when we go to different locations, we try in some measure to actually focus on the needs in that particular area. And this is why it's so important when a meeting is happening in North America or in the LAC region, that the Caribbean as a unit come out in full force, participate remotely in full force, so that the needs of our region will actually be addressed. And this also relates to something that we call the Next Gen program, which is a program for university students, but university students within the meeting is taking place. So when an ICANN meeting is taking place in the LAC region, as it was with Cancun, Mexico, for example, then persons from the Caribbean who are in secondary school are able to apply and get travel funding to participate in that ICANN meeting.
Thank you very much. Nigel, you had a comment or a question?
Well, it was to draw attention to Tracy's comment number
Okay.
one. And also just to say that I saw in the chat as well that Nate did confirm what fees would have been applicable to the Connected Caribbean Summit in December. So not seeing anyone. Moving on, actually. Moving on to December. Yeah, actually, this might be our last event presentation. We will have the UN-IGF having the 19th session in Saudi Arabia. To learn more of that, I will invite Ms. Anya Gengo from the UN-IGF Secretariat, the office in Geneva, to tell us about it. Anya, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nigel, and good evening from Geneva to everyone. there. I hope you're doing well and finishing this week with this pleasant meeting, like for me as well, finishing the day. So, indeed, as Nigel said, we are at the Secretariat working now more and more intensively for preparing for the 19th annual IGF meeting. The meeting, as you know, is hosted by the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh from 15th to 19th of December. Building our multi-stakeholder digital future is our overarching theme. And the draft schedule, the agenda is already available on the IGF website, and just access the agenda, then you will see a lot of sessions. It will take some time to navigate it. There is high interest, of course, this year for the IGF. The agenda already contains more than 300 different sessions, which are focused and kind of developed around the main sub-themes of the meeting. And those sub-themes really are quite diverse, encompassing various areas from harnessing innovation to enhancing digital contributions to peace, development, sustainability, all the way to advancing human rights and improving digital governance for the internet we want. So it's quite diverse. Of course, beginning of this year, when we called for issues and we called for session proposals, it was already clear that there will be area that will be dominating the agenda, following that bottom-up principle of asking stakeholders what is their interest this year. And that, of course, I'm sure you can guess, is are issues related to governing artificial intelligence. But in addition to that, really many other sessions are present on various subjects. Let me maybe tell you where we are now in terms of the preparations and what could be interesting to you in terms of the engagement. So indeed, we did close the call for session proposal. So in that sense, submitting a formal session proposal is not an option anymore. But what is an option is to look at what there is in the agenda and then approach the session organizers for cooperation or creating any kinds of synergies. The Secretariat is at your disposal if you would like to be connected to any of the session organizers. The session organizers come really from all over the world. We have really a vast number of countries, of communities present. So in that sense, maybe look at the agenda, see the profiles of the sessions, and let us know if you would like to be connected. The upcoming opportunity will be to reserve space for a bilateral meeting. So we expect very soon, in a matter of days, for the bilateral room system to be open. And so that in practice means that you would map the public list of participants or the agenda and see who is there, map who is or circle who's of your interest to meet. And then reserve a space where you can bilaterally meet on the margins of the meeting and discuss mutual interest in more like a privacy of that public venue. The Secretariat again is at your disposal. Please be free to approach us. We're happy to connect you with stakeholders of your interest. The meeting itself is, in addition to these number of formal sessions, is expected to feature a couple of social events, networking events. So, for example, the, I guess, well-known traditional IGF village will be set up traditionally at the venue. More than 80 different stakeholders, both from the host country, from the region around the host country, but also from all over the world, will be featured and exhibiting their internet governance related work at the IGF village. That is always a good opportunity for participants who are fortunate to be on site at the IGF to just tour the village and see who is doing what and then network and connect. We also, of course, plan for the meeting to have a completely online component. That is not just for the formal sessions. We are doing our best to enable, for example, online participation or online tour of the IGF village as well. We are hoping to establish a way for online meeting participants as well. So, for example, you don't have to run bilateral meetings only on site. There will be the opportunity or option to also do that online. We are now in a process of working closely with communities from around the world to understand if they would like to organize remote hubs. Remote hubs are organized ways of participation, traditionally always part of the IGF, to us very important. Something similar that you are doing, for example, today in terms of having your joint collective meeting and following certain activities is a form of an organized participation. The Secretariat is hoping to support primarily substantively a number of remote hubs in developing countries, but also maybe also financially, as we did in the past years. That's still to be decided. In terms of the call for travel support, that concluded or closed the end of 10th of September. We received a record number of applications. It really exceeds the average number of the past years. So now we are in a very serious, as you can imagine, work where we have to evaluate all the applications and then together with the host country understand how many stakeholders we will be able to support to receive travel support to join us in Riyadh in December. But of course, the call for travel support closed, but there is one option that is open for a specific target group to the IGF, and I'd say of interest, of course, to the global community, and those are the professional journalists. So in that sense, if, for example, from your region, there are journalists that would like to professionally report on the IGF, you will see that there is a call for travel support that is open to these categories, and they can consider applying, and I kindly ask you maybe to help us to ensure that this opportunity reaches these professionals from your region as well. In addition to preparing for the annual meeting, as I'm sure you know, there are processes around us which are getting more and more intensive. They are very important. So I primarily refer to the Summit of the Future and the Global Digital Compact negotiations and hopefully adoption. So that will start technically toward the end of next week in New York. The Secretariat will have its on-site presence there. And thanks to the host country, there will be also some events and some meetings, receptions organized at the margins of the summit to ensure that the IGF has a voice in these very important processes. And as you know, the Global Digital Compact, the current drafts that have been circulated in the public, the consultations as well, made quite a significant number of references to the IGF. Not just to the IGF as a global entity, but really as an ecosystem, which means that it also recognizes the critically important role of the national, regional, sub-regional, and youth IGFs. In addition to that, another process that's important to us is the 20-year review of the World Summit on the Information Society. The preparations are underway, and the review, of course, is taking place later in next year. But it is important for all of us to recognize that this is our opportunity to look back at really quite a lot of achievements in the past 2 decades made by the community, including, of course, the Caribbean, especially the Caribbean IGF as the very first IGF initiative that hosted the annual meeting. And in that sense, many of the sessions at the IGF in Riyadh will be focused on WSIS Plus 20. And we expect to play an active role in the preparations. And I'm sure I'm seeing that from working with the NRI colleagues, is that the NRIs are quite aware that this is a process where they will have their say and they plan to contribute. Then finally, I just want to say 2 more things about the annual meeting in Riyadh. So there are some new, I think, innovative approaches this year. The Secretariat, as well as the MAG, the leadership panel, I think the community as well are aware of how important, particularly important this year is in terms of these processes and just the political momentum. And in that sense, we are focused on a tailored, specific strategic outreach toward specific groups. So I primarily refer, for example, on young people, working with young people together to understand what are their concerns, but also what they see as a potential in the internet governance sphere where we need to work together. So I am really glad that from the Caribbean region, we do have very active colleagues in the youth track, and the IGF Global Youth Summit, for example, which will take place on the 15th of December, which is day zero of the IGF, will create an opportunity for an intergenerational dialogue on a really high level in terms of the current generation of experts and leaders, and a very diverse level in terms of the backgrounds of all the speakers, particularly young people who will be taking active role there. We're also focused on working with members of parliaments and with judiciary, which we think is traditionally underrepresented in the internet governance landscape. So we do expect a number of program components which will be focused on the opportunities presented to the global community to work with legislators, with judiciary, to understand what are the challenges they face in their respective countries and regions, and how can we work together so that when they make decisions, they really make informed decisions that can benefit us all. And finally, another targeted group are the businesses, so the private sector, big tech companies, but also other types of industries, and of course the SMEs. They are all extremely important to the IGF. In the past couple of years, we've seen exponential growth in terms of their participation. Still, a lot needs to be done, and we are hoping to have an integrated approach toward them in terms of engaging them in the overall program, but also creating opportunities for us who are kind of traditionally participating in these internet governance processes to get to know them and to have them then long-term engaged in our processes. And finally, I will, because I certainly would like to leave time for questions if you have, I just would like to say that the registration for the IGF is open. The list of approved participants is public. There are more than, I think, 2,000 participants already registered, and that is quite a high number, given the fact that we are still quite away from the annual IGF meeting in December. And in that sense, I hope that you will join us in Riyadh, if not on site, then of course online. I think it would be important to hear your perspectives. We learned a lot during the Caribbean IGF, the Caribbean Youth IGF as well. It's a region that really always comes with quite specific inputs, and I think for the global discourse, it's critically important. Our MAC chair, as you know, comes from the region. Carol is from the Bahamas. And I think in the past 2 years, Carol made really also quite a lot of efforts and a difference in terms of bringing the inputs from the region into the IGF, just because she also lives through it and she understands the specificities. And I hope that we can just continue nurturing this really nice cooperation and partnership we have to ensure that the Caribbean region is really vocal at the IGF in Riyadh, but also beyond. I will stop here, and I'm happy to take any questions and respond if I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anya. And we certainly appreciate the collaboration and cooperation and the relationship, in fact, we've built up with the UN-IGF Secretariat over the years. And I think it's great that in this important cycle where we are reviewing the 20 years or so of the IGF, that we do have the Caribbean at the head of the member. So certainly we'll have the small island developing states perspective involved in that review.
Yeah, Nigel, I wanted to ask a bit about the or request that some more information or links with respect to the events taking place in the Summit of the Future. I know there's a lot taking place in New York because it's actually proceeding or in the margins of the United Nations General Assembly. We've been promoting it, the Summit of the Future, with our diplomats in New York, with the Caribbean, and I'd be happy to, and we plan to be there as well, and happy to have any additional information with respect to any UN IGF related activities, or for the host country. I think you mentioned that they'll be there as well promoting the event.
Yes, thank you very much. I will forward directly to you, Rodney and Nigel, details about this specific event that the host country is organizing. It is a dedicated panel that will look into the potential cooperation or better yet relationship between what the Global Digital Compact might be and what the IGF is. And so in that sense, I think that event is taking place on the 21st nearby the UN headquarters. And then it's going to be followed by a networking event, so by a reception. So I will, it's a limited space, but I will with great pleasure share with you these details. And if you will be in New York, it would be wonderful if you could join this meeting and of course share with with the missions from the region there as well. This is what I know. I know that there will be also other opportunities. So this meeting that I just mentioned is organized by the host country. Our Undersecretary General, for example, will be one of the speakers. That panel will be moderated by the head of the office of the IGF Secretariat. It will have representation from the host country as well, from the previous host countries also, just to understand that transition. But I know there are other events which are, of course, of high interest to us as well during the action days, for example, the summit itself. For instance, I know that there will be a number of civil society organizations who are well organized and cooperating on addressing the Global Digital Compact with respect to the WSIS principles and internet governance. Some of these events are also of the interest to the Secretariat. We expect to be present there. So in that sense, I will be happy, as I said, to share the invitation with you shortly after this session.
Thank you. I did see in the last day or two a link to that call for travel support for journalists for the IGF. But if you have it handy, could you just maybe post it in the chat here as well?
I will do so now, yes.
Thanks. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions coming up, so maybe we should move along.
Yeah, let me just mention that we will have, I believe Nigel will be attending the IGF in Riyadh. We had a very good level of participation last year in Kyoto. We had a booth, we had a discussion forum. We won't have that level of participation this year, unfortunately, but we will certainly be following from here and encouraging our regional stakeholders to be tuned in as the events unfold. Of course, there's a couple hours ahead of us here, but we will do our best to ensure that we follow the discussion with great interest. So thank you for your input today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. And we count on your participation in Riyadh. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go now to, we just have about two more presentations. We were to have a presentation from Grenada on the electronic communications bill. Unfortunately, we won't have that today, but hopefully we can bring that to you sometime in the future. We'd like to let you know about new pieces of legislation that are being passed and their implications for the ICT sector, and in this case, electronic communications bill is very critical to the development and for creating the right policy framework for electronic communications in Grenada. So at some point, we hope to bring that to you in the future. But we will have next then a presentation from the from the Trinidad and Tobago Financial Center, Mr. John Outridge, who's the CEO, who will tell us about a recently concluded National Financial Inclusion Report 2023, a very interesting read, and I'm sure he'll share the links with us, but it talks about digital financial inclusion. What is the level of uptake for digital financial services, your mobile wallets, your digital wallets, your online banking, your credit cards, digital payments. And it's a very, very intriguing study. And I'd love to see that data as well for the rest of our member states, but it's so interesting. And the factors that are influencing people's move towards digital money. So John, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Please share with us your insights with respect to the recently concluded report.
An afternoon all, and thanks again, Secretary General. Thanks again, Deputy Secretary General. Thanks to the CTU for allowing me to make this presentation. Unfortunately, I know I'm in between the audience and happy hour on this Friday the 13th, so hopefully I won't take up too much of your time. But I think it's, again, as you were saying, Rodney, I think this is a very interesting study that we undertook in Trinidad and Tobago. And just to kind of set the context, I have a very brief slideshow with some of the key highlights. So here in Trinidad and Tobago, one of the main things or the main gaps that we had as a country was we never really had any data to really measure what I would call the financial inclusion rates within the country. We have always spent a lot of energy and focus more in terms of what I would call the digital inclusion indicators. And it's very interesting to know that digital inclusion is actually a key component of financial inclusion. And financial inclusion at a very high level really sort of measures in terms of what percentage of your population actually resides within what I would call the formal economy, right? And when you look, and you mentioned this point, Rodney, in terms of the digital economy, right? And how that is such a strong indicator and a strong driver towards, contribution to GDP, right? So if you have a large percentage of your population actually using digital payments, that directly hits the bottom line when you start talking about GDP, right? Because you start talking about the movement of money, the financial sector, everything just sort of works, right? And the last time Trinidad and Tobago was measured by the World Bank was in 2017, right? And at that point in time, our financial, what I would call exclusion rate was basically 17% of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, 1.4 million people, did not have access to financial services, right? And before I get into what the results of the survey was, basically when we measured it in 2023, that figure actually grew. So that was the sort of burning platform issue as to, something isn't right working within Trinidad and Tobago. So that's simply about the TTIFC. We are sort of focused on three big areas: financial inclusion research programs. We partner with United Nations Capital Development Fund and the European Union, digital payments acceleration within government, and fintech innovation, most notably, the launch of our regional fintech hub, One Fintech Avenue, where we've been having a number of different programs and accelerating fintech sprints and so forth. So, as I mentioned previously, why did we conduct a financial inclusion survey? Was to really understand three things. What exactly are the financial exclusion rates from 2017, which I mentioned was about 17%? What are the main barriers and challenges that are faced by the population and businesses in terms of using financial products and services? And more importantly, the willingness to use digital financial solutions, right? Because one of the things that we are working towards in Trinidad and Tobago across all different actors, Ministry of Digital Transformation, TTIFC, the banks, the central bank, is promoting the adoption of more digital payments, right? So at this point in time, Trinidad and Tobago has 5 mobile money operators approved to operate in Trinidad and Tobago. And to give you some context, we have 8 commercial banking licenses. So you can see the sort of policy appetite of the central bank to really drive the adoption of mobile money, right? And this kind of gives us some good data from that perspective. So the highlights of that survey basically is, we grew from 17% to 25%, right? In terms of the population having access to the formal economy, right? And what that really meant was out of that 25%, when we looked at the data, it was sort of split half and half. So we had 50% of the 25% basically citing the fact that they didn't feel like they had the right access to be part of the formal economy, meaning that they didn't think they had the money, or they didn't believe, they felt it was too expensive. And then the other 50% basically felt that the system was pushing them out. And this comes with changes in regulations, EML policies, documentation to open an account, so those are some of the broad challenges. But more importantly, what we realized was our MSME sector. 77% of that sector basically lacked a dedicated business bank account. So what that meant was we have a lot of MSMEs here who are basically commingling. So they're setting up the businesses. They can't get a business bank account, so they have to use their personal account and commingle funds. Obviously, that doesn't allow them to then basically grow their businesses because, again, the bank has no track record for those businesses, right? They can't get funding. They can't apply for grants, so it becomes a sort of vicious cycle. They can't grow. But 86% of that same MSME sector do not accept digital payments. And when you think about Trinidad and Tobago, at the SME level, we have about 28,000 registered SMEs, right? And they do not have any form of digital acceptance, meaning online e-commerce, digital point of sale, they operate in cash, right? And one of the other bigger aspects was 56% of persons that we surveyed who actually are included did not know how to use mobile banking apps, did not understand the terms about fintechs, didn't understand digital payments. Yeah. So these are some of the sort of big areas we saw coming out of the survey. And one of the things that we kind of saw, particularly for cash usage, when we started to talk about looking at digital payments, over 60% of all transactions done in Trinidad and Tobago is done in cash. Now, to put that into perspective, Trinidad and Tobago is $100 billion economy. So when you think about, we're talking about nearly 60% of that running through, not passing through the formal economy, right? Which means that you have a lot of money being saved in mattresses, and all sorts of different places. So that capital is not being used within the economy, right? So one of the things that we sort of looking at and we kind of realizing are sort of the next steps is obviously in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, from that financial exclusion perspective, it really sort of impacts persons' ability to mitigate economic shocks and maintain resiliency, right? So again, being able to borrow. The fact that a lot of the population, in terms of having access to a formal financial institution, although we do have a large percentage of persons included, one of the things we realize is that not all municipalities are included as others. And I'll show that on the next slide, meaning that in some cases, we have, persons who could access ATM or access a bank branch within 15 minutes. In the rural areas, there's absolutely no access, right? And then, as I mentioned, in terms of the types of barriers and challenges, high fees were cited, documentation requirements, right? Particularly to get access to digital payments, solutions, and so forth. And hence why we're looking at the mobile money operators and really starting to sort of position the sort of policy decisions to really get what I would call the underserved segments like the MSMEs into the formal economy. Right, and this is just a snapshot in terms of, because we did survey over 2,000 households within Trinidad and Tobago, and it's very interesting to see that what I would call the hotspots in terms of where we're financially excluded was, for those who know Trinidad, our South Salmon Laventil, the entire city of San Fernando, Diego Martin, Pinal Debe. And interestingly enough, these are really where the density of our population centers sort of reside, yeah? And what this means is that within these locations, what you would find is people have to use cash because there's very low penetration of financial services, bank branches, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of gives us a perspective. One of the things I want to plug here is that outside of the report that we have that is on our website, we are looking to partner with agencies. So we also do have the raw data on a statistical package that we're happy to share because, it gives a lot of perspectives in terms of understanding not just financial inclusion, but we also had questions around digital inclusion and so forth. So some of the stats on the financial services, which is interesting, was that we identified that, Trinidad and Tobago is a high savings economy. 75% of the population actually saved, but 82% of that 75% actually saved at home, which I was mentioned, kind of attributes to the sort of high cash usage, right? And the fact is that, 3% of the population, they have some of these sort of more mature financial products and services, but when you sort of look at it, what we are trying to do is to take some of this 82% and move it into the 52% to put money into the formal financial sector, right? But as I mentioned, there are those barriers and challenges, and it really begins in terms of, the onboarding processes. This is where you see opportunities for eKYC, the electronic identifier, all of these sort of cross-cutting digital infrastructure that, is used in what I would call more modern societies now being a sort of not just a nice to have, but a real requirement, particularly for Trinidad and Tobago, if we want to move from that perspective. So the outcome of the survey was to really set a baseline data in terms of where Trinidad and Tobago is, where the barriers and challenges are, and what do we need to do. So at this point in time, we have a draft national financial inclusion strategy for Trinidad and Tobago. It's with the Minister of Finance right now for evaluation. And what that is going to do is basically sort of focus on 3 objectives. And we'll have a number of different policies and programs that will be sort of executed via working groups, which will include various sectors of society, but sort of driven by the Ministry of Finance, the TTIFC, and the central bank. And those 3 major objectives are: 1, all individuals can easily open, afford, and use a basic transactional account without undue challenges, and to make sure that those accounts are competitive, easily interoperable, and without exorbitant fees. 2, all MSMEs can easily open a merchant business bank account with options to accept digital payments, and any payment-related issue can be settled properly. And 3, all underserved populations can better protect themselves and are better equipped to mitigate against social financial risks. So some of the big ticket projects that we kind of have here that are part of the strategy is: 1, amending regulations to allow persons to be able to open bank accounts with simplified due diligence, and promoting that. The central bank already has a simplified due diligence regulation to allow persons who make below 86,000 TT a year to open a bank account with 1 form of ID. So obviously we need to do a better job in promoting that. 2, in terms of the whole digital payment acceptance. So, Trinidad and Tobago has been looking at working with the banking sector, and also in discussions with UPI in India, Mojaloop, other what I would call, what you see, fast payment gateways that have offered the ability to sort of reduce the transaction fees of transactions. So those are active discussions that are happening right now. And 3, this sort of speaks in terms of, providing more education in terms of the banking sector, providing more visibility towards fees, where, for example, in the US, you can go to our website and you could compare mortgages, you can compare different financial products, and you could basically, open one. We don't have that sort of consumer-facing technology or market research sites, right? So those are the gaps we want to sort of offer when it comes to financial inclusion. And all of this is going to be driven through a National Financial Inclusion Secretariat that we hope could be launched by October of this year. So I will stop there, and happy to answer any questions and comments. Right now, you can get a copy of the detailed survey on our website, ttifc.co.tt. You can just simply go there. It's on the homepage. And as I said, we are willing to share and work with anyone in terms of the actual detailed data.
Thank you very much, John. I noticed that with respect to this strategy, there's seems to be an emphasis on the banking sector. But you mentioned a number of licenses. I assume maybe some banks, maybe some non-banks, and so to what extent will that be also a key part of the strategy, promoting these other non-banking solutions, mobile money, wallet providers, and so on? Is that because that's touted as opening the door for greater financial inclusion?
Correct.
Other point of sale, image there, and we know those can be costly. There are fees associated with that. And so on. So to what extent are these alternative solutions or services a part of your strategy?
It actually is the major part of the strategy, because the reality is, and this is not a Trinidad problem, it's a Caribbean problem, right? Because I don't think there's any Caribbean country right now that isn't thinking about financial inclusion in one form or the other, right? And the challenges has really been in terms of getting persons to be part of the banking sector, but also the catch-22 with that is the bank themselves are responding to a lot of different regulatory changes, not just within their own central banks, but more importantly from the correspondent banks. And that is always a sort of toss-up, right? So mobile money and enabling more mobile money operators is one of those sort of mechanisms that can assist with that, because they have separate regulatory, what I will call tiers that they can onboard persons for to do different types of transactions, right? And the idea is to at least be able to offer them some sort of product where, again, they can convert their cash into digital money and use that to sort of transact, right? Now, outside of the central bank, issuing more of those licenses, because, in Trinidad and Tobago, it's, I don't think you can get a commercial banking license again. The central bank is actively promoting this category of regulatory product, right, in terms of mobile money, right? We are working with them to also enable other types of category, virtual assets and so forth. But this is where fintech really plays a role. From a TTIC perspective, we are working with many what I would call fintech providers who are in the payment space, who are developing solutions, soft point of sale, new payment gateway products and so forth, basically with an aim of reducing the cost of transactions, right? And that is one of the main sort of policy decisions that the Ministry of Finance is sort of working with to really get that, to your point, what you mentioned, Rodney, get that sort of merchant discount rate to a very competitive price. Even sort of carve out what I would call a sort of particular rate for MSMEs to drive the adoption of payments, right? Similar like what they would have done in India, with UPI. So there's a number of considerations, but yes, the enabling alternative finance providers to assist with the financial inclusion, where you have, a huge distrust of the financial institutions and where you also have that regulatory challenges, those are the things that we kind of working on both ends.
All right, thank you, John. We're out of time. Really intrigued by your presentation. Thank you for joining us to share this. And like I said, I'd love for us to extrapolate this to some of our other member states and have a regional picture of it. I tell the story of how I was in London maybe last year, and I went out and I could not find any, I think this was a Friday evening, and I could not find an establishment willing to take cash. They were just like, we don't take cash. And it was very eye-opening experience and all that. In a big city like London, it was in Wembley, I believe, and there was nobody taking cash. So I think we have a long way to go in the region. But thanks again. We're going to go over to our last presenter. Mr. Tariq Mohammed is a consultant with the ITU, and he's here to tell us about the ITU Smart Seas Validation Workshop, December 2nd to 3rd. You tell us if it's virtual or if it's in person. Tariq, thanks for joining us. Oh. We can't hear you if you're speaking. We can see your slides.
It says talking, but we're not hearing.
Yeah. Double check your audio, and meanwhile I'll check see if there are any questions in the chat. A couple comments here from Nate. As soon as we can hear you, Tariq, we'll let you know. Nate has shared his email address for more information. Archive load, confirm those. Archive. Okay, archive. Last year, you don't need to answer on camera if you want to respond here in the comments. Last year, we had participation of CARICHAM, Caribbean Chamber of Commerce. Oh, there we go. So Nate, if they're a partnership there again with the CARICHAM, can let us know in the chat. So over to you, Terry.
Thank you, SG. Just confirming that you all can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. Let me just reshare my screen really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tariq Mohammed. I'm a consultant under the Smart Seas Toolkit for Disaster Resilience Project. And today I'm here to talk about the upcoming Agenda Validation Workshop. So today I'm really here to talk about digital inclusion and in particular, one underserved vulnerable group. Fishing is often considered one of the world's most dangerous jobs, with thousands of annual fatalities recorded in this sector. Small-scale fishers who ply their trade in these small undecked vessels that we call pirogues in the Caribbean comprise approximately 94% of the global fisheries fleet and are responsible for about 40% of the fish we consume on a daily basis. These fishers are highly vulnerable from a few different perspectives. one, in terms of their livelihoods, they are digitally as well as financially marginalized and excluded digitally, as well as their lives themselves. They are highly vulnerable physically to a number of disasters that they can face while out at sea in these small wooden undecked vessels that provide them with very little protection against the elements. ICTs are, of course, very critical in both disaster resilience of all persons, including the small-scale fishers, as well as in supporting their livelihoods. So the ITU, CTU, and TAT have come together to launch and have been doing this Smart Seas Toolkit for Disaster Resilience project, also as we simply call Smart Seas project, since 2021. The aim of this project is to increase the resilience and ultimately preserve the lives of small-scale fishers with an emphasis on the enabling environment. When I say that the enabling environment, I really refer to a set of actors, policies, regulations, operations, and capacity of all the associated agents and agencies within the maritime communications ecosystem. The enabling environment, of course, is essential to promote affordable and accessible ICTs for all. The Smart Seas project is defined geographically through this red polygon that we see here, which represents the Trinidad and Tobago search and rescue region. Approximately 62,000 square nautical miles, covering the countries of Barbados, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago. The problem space we're focused on is that of maritime communications, though the ultimate beneficiaries is that of the fisheries sector. The project spans 4 dimensions: policy and regulation, operations, capacity, and technology. And while they're being instantiated through this scope, the real outputs, outcomes, and impacts of this project will be transferable both to other sectors and other marginalized, underserved, and vulnerable communities, while being extensible to the rest of the Caribbean as well as worldwide. The 4 main outputs under this project, which include a gap analysis of the maritime communications ecosystem for our 4 countries, the online Smart Seas Toolkit, which provides a comprehensive set of resources for actors and agents within the enabling environment to strengthen their operations, capacity, as well as compliance with UN recommendations, regulations, and artifacts, procurement of equipment, as well as an agenda for accessible communications at sea, which we'll be talking about here today. The outcomes of this project, which are the short-term goals, are to have a capacitated ecosystem, as well as strengthening the enabling environment, while the impacts, which are the long-term goals, are disaster-resilient small-scale fishers. So, as I said, we're here to talk about the agenda and what that entails. The agenda for accessible communications at sea for small-scale fishers sets out to assemble a very informal global community to develop a list of priorities that can be tackled to enable affordable, accessible communications for small-scale fishers across different stakeholder groups. We've been doing a lot of activities on this activity since the start of January last year, where we kicked off the agenda. We hosted a hybrid really, workshop in Trinidad and Tobago in March, from which we've been having a number of revisions to the agenda. At the end of September of this year, which is the month we're in right now, we'd like to release another version of the agenda and share that with all interested stakeholders to give any comments or feedback which they may have. The relevant stakeholder groups are very exhaustive, really. They include research institutions, service providers, all the agencies within the fisheries sector, telecommunications sector, maritime sector, entrepreneurs, manufacturers, standardization bodies, and the list really goes on and on, as this niche area that we're looking at through the project tackles a number of interlocking and interlapping sectors. We were planning to have a validation workshop at the end of this year, but it's now being moved to early January of next year. So still want to use that opportunity under this meeting here to invite you all to that with hopes of finalizing the agenda, validating and finalizing the agenda during that meeting. So what are we focused on in this agenda? Within this agenda, we look at the current state of communications at sea, which we're calling supply, as well as what we envision to be accessible communications for the fishers. We recognize that a number of gaps exist between them, which is why we aren't at fully accessible communication side of things. These gaps exist across a number of dimensions within both the data as well as the communications themselves, in terms of devices, services, capacity, adoption, as well as the associated policy and regulatory environment. Recognizing and identifying the gaps that exist, we are doing through this initiative, identifying and basically classifying the different priorities across these different thematic focuses or enablers of accessible communications, as we're calling them, that can help us both nationally, regionally, internationally, move from our current state of communications to that of accessible communications for our fishers. Of course, once we tackle the case of the small scale fishers, which represent that marginalized and really the baseline for which communication should be provided, this will provide benefits to all mariners and all other seafarers. So just to wrap up really quickly, how can you get involved? There are two main ways right now. As I mentioned, we will be putting out a report for further feedback and consultation at the end of this month. So we'll be sharing that, and any comments or queries or modifications that you have. We'd love to hear any feedback that you have, as well as on our workshop tentatively scheduled for early January of next year. This will be an online workshop taking place over 2 days. The first day focusing on the enabling environment, recognizing and really identifying the priorities that we need to fix based on what we currently have, as well as on the second day, looking forward into research and development priorities to inspire future research projects and ways to support our communications at sea. So with that, I just want to really wrap up this short presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time at sst@ctu.int, or you can feel free to send a message in this chat. Thank you very much. Back over, SG.
Thank you, Tariq. You finish on the dot, and yeah, we appreciate it. There's a question whether or not there is some collaboration with ACS. I believe Rachel is referring to the Association of Caribbean States. They do a lot of work around the Caribbean Sea and so on. Whether they are stakeholders or whether there has been any collaboration. So if you can answer that quickly, either on the camera or in the chat.
Thank you, SG and Rachel. So we had not reached out to this initiative. So thanks so much for identifying this. What we'll do is we will reach out to them, and Rachel, I'll talk to you on the side, right? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you as well. And that brings us to the end. It's a wrap, folks. Thanks so much for joining us for all of it. There is by the way, a link in the chat with respect to your feedback. We want to know always what your thoughts on the session, your thoughts on the presenters, what we need to include, how we can improve this forecast meeting going forward. Every quarter we will we propose to have one for each quarter, beginning again next year in January. So we welcome your feedback as to how we can improve these sessions. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Thanks as well all the collaborators, the presenters today for keeping us informed. And as always, we try to advocate for Caribbean participation within these meetings. You care to have the last word, Nigel?
Just to thank everybody for joining. We appreciate the support, and we are aiming to please. So please do respond to the feedback form. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So until next time, looking forward to seeing you in some of these upcoming meetings. Thank you so much again.